My session's called How to Raise a Baby Bird in Unity, Use AI to Bring it to Life, and use social media to share it with others. That's what we're going to be talking about today. What's that?
Shorter title.
I would try to go for the longest title possible. I have some space left.
What's the length of your title?
All right, so I've been making games for 22 years, started in PC gaming, console, mobile, and in 2014, I got to go over to Valve and saw the early versions of Vive while they're working on that. When I saw that demo, that blew my mind, so I really wanted to get into VR from that point on. Excuse me a second, set up my timer. Okay. So since then, I've been working in VR for the last 4 or 5 years. Our first VR game as a team was Wayward Sky for PlayStation VR. It was a launch title in 2016. And we followed up with a game called Dino Frontier, which was 2017. And then with that same small crew, we started Outerloop Games in 2017. Our studio of 4 people full-time, all distributed in the Seattle area, working on through Zoom and Slack. And then for our first title, it's called FALCON Age, which just came out in April for PlayStation VR. There was about 9 people that worked on it. Essentially, FALCON Age is a game about raising a falcon, and you fight robot colonizers. It's set in a sci-fi world where you play the role of Ara, the girl in the middle there, who lives on a planet that's been colonized for generations, and with the help of a baby falcon that you meet while in a colonizer prison, you escape, and you retake your culture back. So the game is built for VR initially and also works in non-VR. You see some of these clips, it's a combination of both. We'll talk about all the different aspects of that as we get into it. It's built in Unity, as our last 4 other projects were as well. So the inspiration for this, if you look up Golden Eagle attacks mountain goat, which is that clip on the left there, I saw it on YouTube years ago. Golden eagles are scary. They're big birds. Mountain goats are kind of big too, as you can see. So this clip has a golden eagle flying off a mountain, picking up this goat, and then tries to carry off with it, but it's too heavy, so it drops it off the mountain, kills it, and it's terrifying. So that led me to look up other falconry type things and research. I live in the Seattle area, and apparently there's a lot of falconers there in the area, so we spent some time with the falconers, did some more research on birds, and we thought it might be a cool thing in VR, so that's where sort of the inspiration for that came from. And then, so the initial prototype, like I said, we use Unity. I think at this time, this is about 2 years ago. At that time, Unity 2017 and 2016, we started prototyping some of the mechanics of falconry. How do you call the bird? How do you tell the bird to do things? So in this case, we use a whistle mechanic. So once you have your VR device, you can bring it close to your mouth, pull the trigger, the bird comes to you regardless of where they are in the world. There's audio responses to that. And then for the basic locomotion, it's teleportation. But we have all sorts of options. So if you like smooth motion, you don't get motion sick. After 5 years of VR, I still get motion sick. And I force myself not to get over that, just so I can be sensitive to it for players that still do. So yeah, we used Unity primitives initially, and then we used a bunch of stuff off the asset store, like this rock pack, which is called PolyQuest rocks, just to get a sense of scale as we're laying things out. And we kept it pretty ugly and basic to figure out what the scale of the world is, how the bird's going to fly around without hitting into things. About 3 months in, we decided to get some outside feedback and try to pitch it, try to get funding for the project. And this is about 3 months in. Our bird model was real ugly back then, but it was fine. It was like just to get the idea across. It was a 5-minute demo that demonstrated what it's like to control a falcon in VR. So there's a bird pointer. You can tell it to go fetch things. You whistle for it back. You feed it. The scale change, the first time we were able to whistle for the bird in VR, it was just a magical moment, just seeing that scale change from a little speck in the sky and come in landing on your hand, even with this not the most attractive model, but it worked out really well. So we were convinced like we could make it work. This whole set is just an asset off the asset store. I think it was called PBR Desert Landscape, and then another asset pack called 3D Clouds, and just standard fog and things. Only thing we built were, obviously the bird and some of the props, but this was a good way for us to pitch the project early on. We didn't know what the art style was going to be yet. I know I wanted to do it stylized, but this is a good way to test it out. This is what the game looks like today. To lay out the world is the size of Disneyland. You ever been to Disneyland? I'm sure, yes. It's like a small valley. Again, we're a small team. Like, what could we do in that scale, in that space? So we decided to make it size of Disneyland, and to do that, we used Unity terrain to lay the whole area out, along with some temp assets and things off the asset store. One of the plugins we used is called Microsplat. Microsplats, you see a screenshot of it to the right there, allows us to paint textures on the terrain, and layer it together, and 12 different textures all together. This is before Unity's 2019, 2018, so this is the only thing we could do at the time. And then for the grass and smaller shrubs and props, we used a plugin called Vegetation Studio, which has a bunch of rule sets really neat. You can just start painting wherever there's grass, the grass will show up, and you can optimize it for console, for PlayStation 4 needs, and draw distance and all sorts of things. So another great plugin. So the game starts in a colonizer prison. Ara's been thrown in there, and that's where you meet your bird. Every game, especially in a prison, you need to have a toilet. So I went to the asset store, typed in toilet, found this flushing toilet asset. It's fully animated, scripted, you just drop it in. It's got sounds and effects, it was great. Only thing we did was change the visuals on the bottom left to make it fit with the world. It's a narrative-based game. It's about 6 to 8 hours, depending on how you play it. And for a lot of the story, it comes from dialogue as you talk to characters. This character here is your auntie that makes you feel guilty about your life choices in the game. We wanted to really get a good Asian auntie in the game. So for the dialogue system, we used a thing called Ink. Ink is something developed by Inkle Studios. They do a lot of narrative-heavy games. This allowed us to do branching dialogue, integrate bird reactions as you talk to people, integrate animations, integrate gameplay logic, quest. That was a free plugin. The bird is fully customizable. There's cosmetic items, there's gameplay elements like backpacks that allows it to get through certain areas, and defensive items. So that hat and shades the bird's wearing right there just came off of I think it's called PBR hat pack. So we try to use as much as we can. I mean, the art team is myself and another artist, one programmer, effects, animator, a couple of writers, and sound and music. So, whenever we can, we try to get stuff off the asset store as much as possible to save time. For the design of our Falcon, it's a sci-fi setting, so we took some liberties. We mixed a combination of the bird's big as a golden eagle, has some owl tendencies, falcon hawk, and hawk-like details on the head. And we wanted to stand out from the environment, so we colored it red and make sure it was contrasty as it's flying around, because it's, you want to be, as a player, you want to be able to spot it as you play. The most complex thing in the game is our animation system. The bird, she has a ton of animation work. This is using, we're also testing with different devices. This is using an index controller so we can mess with the fingers. She'll land on different fingers and finger hop around. And there's sensors on every knuckle and palm, so if the feathers all react to any digit on either hand. So we use a lot of animation layers. That's what the left side here. We have a base layer, and there's all sorts of, this is going into what the head does and what the feet do separately. And we blend upper body, lower body, and different systems together to make this all work. Along with different animations and props and hats, the bird also has toys. So those are things you find, you get from quests, from NPCs. And those are what we call full body animation. So instead of blending partial bodies, it's a custom animation for every prop. Like I said, the game was built for VR, but we ended up doing a non-VR version just for development. So as we're laying out the world, setting up props or dialogue, it was easier to go non-VR. So, and that we decided early on to ship that because we wanted to have more people play it, and we had done non-VR games before, and we thought we could do it with this one. But doing non-VR along with VR, which means anything that's motion controlled in VR is customly animated for non-VR. So the character animation system, character interaction, any interaction with the bird, any interaction with enemies, is fully animated. And to allow us to do that, we had a pretty complex character controller. It's a standard Unity character controller, but we had different layers based on what hardware you have. So if we sense you have a motion controller, or if you have a DualShock or an Xbox controller or index controllers, we switch on the fly to allow you to play with whatever you want to do. As our prop system got pretty complicated, there was a need for blending parts of the bird out. There's certain hats. In this case, we're showing that essentially the feathers on their head, on her head, we blended out so we can have a room for the cap. There's props on props. There's hats on top of masks and all sorts of combos. And it was important to us because we wanted to give the player a choice of how to dress up their bird and customize it, because we ended up seeing a lot of those posts on social media. So in this case, there's a dog hat, a mask, and a bowler hat that shifts on top of that. So there's all sorts of different combos, and for everything we add, every item we add, it has to work for small bird, big bird, and offsets on top of that. So again, it was just all standard Unity stuff, but we designed a system so that it was easy to add props and scale things and offset things with sockets. And so the baby bird was initially going to be the first third of the game. And we started showing it off at shows like PAX, and people just we had a 10-minute demo you can play through, get a sense of the world, gameplay, combat, and then we had people come through and just spend 10 minutes petting the bird. So I was like, okay, I guess we should probably make the baby bird an option. So we added a hat in the game that you get as part of the story, where if you put it back on the adult bird, it'll turn back into the baby bird. Which means it doubles our work, because we had to make sure everything that you could do with the adult bird, you could do with the baby bird, and the balancing of attack and defense and abilities. But we did it early enough that it was fine. So one of the things you've probably seen chickens do and other birds do is, which we wanted to mimic, to try to bring, get some personality to our bird, is in the game, if you bring the bird close to your face, it'll lock on your head, and we call it head lock. I don't know, it's like a chicken steady cam kind of thing. But for this to work, we tried some IK solutions early on, but we couldn't find something that would work reliably and performant enough for VR. I'm sure there are out there, but like I said, we have one animator and one programmer, and the rest of us kind of copy-paste code as needed. But we really have the resource to do it, so we did a really, really dumb system, which is a whole lot of animation poses. And then we blend those poses as needed. So if you're rotating your arm around, we look at the rotation value and then blend to a different pose. And this happens, so on the left is what you see the bird will do if it's rotating around your hand as it rotates, as it spins around. And then in the middle, that's all the poses. So we essentially, your fist is, we treat it like a ball. So if you're moving your fist around, the bird will walk around it. And it feels really good in VR because birds don't weigh that much. I mean, a bird like this will weigh 5 pounds. Yeah, so just having that sense of like low weight and moving your hand around, it's a good sensation. And then the right is how we did the headlock. There's 27 different poses of the head position, and based on how you move your arm, we counter move the body. So it's a really, really dumb system, but it's very effective, doesn't break, super efficient. The bird flies around, so this is custom stuff. We did a custom 3D navigation system for the bird to fly around, make sure it doesn't run into walls, and because the bird is physically driven when it's flying around. It has weight, has acceleration, decelerates, spins, gets around targets, attacks, accelerates when it attacks targets. For that, it uses this node graph to fly around. And then when it goes on your hand, we turn all that off and use a whole different system. But this was a custom system in Unity. So when you go hunt, for example, this rabbit to the left, if you happen to place the bird behind the sun and the rabbit's blinded by the sun, it won't see the bird attacking. We did dumb things like that too, just to give it some extra realism. And on the right, the purple line you see is the bird figuring out what path it takes to navigate this space. A lot of this has to do with the design of the world too. We made sure the world is open and there's really no indoor spaces, that many indoor spaces, so it's easy for the bird to fly around. For the couple indoor spaces we did, we had custom triggers and volumes for it to try to fly through a space. So the game has combat. In this case, we're fighting this robot sentry. Early on, the bird was able to do everything. We made it super powerful. So you could just point to a target, it'll go attack it, destroy it. And then as we started playtesting, we realized, what's the point of being the player, right? I mean, if you're in VR and you're the player and you're just watching the bird, essentially clicking on things and the bird does everything, it's not that interesting. So there's a real bond. What we noticed when we talk to a real falconer, it takes a long time to be a falconer. It takes several years, and you have to train under a master falconer. And there's a real relationship with a falcon and a falconer. And these birds they're not domesticated. They will attack you. Like, they're dangerous. Like, we spent a day with a falconer, and she's like, don't look at my bird in the eye, because it will see you as a threat. She can, we couldn't. So they're dangerous creatures. There's a lot of work into getting their trust, and we were trying to get that theme across in our game. So what we tried to do was balance what the bird can do versus what the player can do. So the player has this melee weapon, has a short range attack, so it can stun things. So essentially in this case, you stun this robot, send the bird at it, and then you finish. So we tried to do this combination of things with different exploration, with the enemies in the game, combat, and things like that. So it's like this really AI buddy companion combo friendship. The bird will take damage. It won't die, but there's these anti-air turrets. Again, this comes into the balance. So if you just send the bird off into an enemy camp like this, it'll get shot and it'll take damage. You see the top left circle it's its health. So part of that is you going in and destroying these turrets before you send the bird off. So there's this balance of what you can do and what the bird can do. And when you pull the needles out, it'll heal, but not fully. So you can pet it, it'll heal it. This shows you some of the damage states. So we have a custom feather shader for it that does damage states based on how many needles are stuck in it or how much damage is taken. To fully heal it, there's a whole cooking system in the game. And these are recipe cards that you find from different people that you talk to and explore. You'll collect these different vegetables, fruit, go hunt, and then you throw it in this cooker. I wish I had this cooker at home, it's magical. And it'll create a little bun for you. And depending on what you cook, what you hunt and what you mix with, it'll do different abilities. So in this case, it's a health object. But there's stealth, increased defense, damage, shock resistance, things like that. And there's a lot of recipes in the game. All right, so we've initially, I'll talk about all these in a second. We announced the game at September during PAX. We didn't have any followers on Twitter or anything. We showed a trailer. We had a playable. Like I said, people came by and just wanted to play with the bird for 10 minutes. So we tested out different GIFs. So everything I've showed you on this presentation are things that we've tweeted out or put it on Tumblr and things like that. So we do something every week. We'll do stuff for Screenshot Saturday. We'll do stuff for like Valentine's Day. The top right petting GIF was one of the first things that like blew up for us. I think it's something like 12,000 likes and a bunch of retweets. But so that was like the first indication that we're like, okay, that we're onto something. People are really reacting well to this. So let's just try more of it. It really didn't matter what time of day, because I tested, right? Like I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do it on Thursday night for Europe time. I'm going to do it on Saturday morning. Like it didn't really matter. So, and the thing that we discovered is, if people like it, they'll share it. And every time we did something, I was always wondering, am I tweeting too many things? But it's like every time we did, somebody else would be like, oh, what's this? This is something we saw for the first time, right? So week to week, we slowly grew an audience with our GIFs. I want to talk about our animator, the guy with the nunchucks there. He's a tremendous animator. He and I have been working together for 15 years. When he's not animating, he does these crazy tricks. Like he does parkour, does all sort of like, nunchucks and things. So in this case, we did a series of videos where he tried to recreate things he animated for the bird in real life. And we did that like once daily during release week, and that worked out really well for us. And then the bottom right, the one in the middle right, where the bird's stretching out, that was a animation retargeting bug where we were trying to play a big bird animation on a small bird, and it just freaks out. So I tweeted that, and that also got a lot of attention. People like, don't fix that, ship that. So we put a ladybug in the game as an item. When you pick it up and you put it on your bird, it freaks out like this. So we shipped it. And there's a little different toys for the bird. So, and then the top left one is something we did for Valentine's Day. So again, this is a combination of VR and non-VR, and we try to do a little bit of both. So it's out for PS4 and PSVR, and we'll be announcing other platforms real soon. Again, like we've been playing with Index and Quest and PC hardware. So again, we're a small team, so we're trying to figure out like what to do. How we just don't have enough time to do it. So it's reviewed well. People seem to like the game. So we had to, there's a lot of things that broke, and we had to just try to fix it as we go. But mostly just the syncing of animations and making sure the blending and really the bird on the hand system was the hardest thing for us. So. Thank you very much.